All right, we are finally here. So, welcome everyone. This is another installment of the Ernest Williams Tango Show. I am Ernest Williams, and this is my show. Today, we are going to talk about more on the history of tango, okay? Because what happens is sometimes people get confused as to where tango came from, and it's important to have some sense of where it came from so you can understand why things are the way they are today, and maybe get a sense of what's going to happen in the future. Tango has taken a path that sometimes you might think is unique, but there are other dance forms and other cultural phenomenon that have taken similar paths. So although the history of tango is kind of murky, you can look at the history of other things and see how they are very similar, and that tango probably followed a similar path, which will help us fill in some of those gaps that we don't have evidence of or records of or proof of, okay? Again, to reiterate what we talked about a little bit on the last show, dealing with the history of tango, the overall, if you were to just see a paragraph of the history of tango, that would be something to the point of tango started in the brothels, okay? Started in the brothels, and the men danced with the prostitutes, and the prostitutes would decide who they wanted to sleep with or whatever based on the guys dancing and their ability to dance. So the guys, because there were not a lot of women compared to men in the population, men had to resort to going to the brothels, and the women in the brothels could afford to be choosy themselves because there were so few women. And then it's like, that just started out of the blue. Where did that come from? How did it get to that point? So when people say, we don't know, it just started in the brothels. So somebody was sitting in the parlor downstairs in the brothel and said, you know what? I'm bored. Let's come up with a dance. And then they came up with something called tango, as intricate and interesting as it is. I don't think so. So it's one of those things where you have to dig deeper to see what happened, to get some sense of what happened. So I'm going to give you my ideas based on things I've read, books and other materials I've read, interviews I've done with people in Uruguay, and I'll tell you why that's important, and just overall looking up things and hearing things in my 18 years of experience and participating in events and things and we'll talk about those things. So obviously, being an African American tango instructor, that would be something that I would be interested in. So a little bit about that. Okay, me being African American that does tango, I've done many things in my life where I was one of few blacks involved. So I grew up in, predominantly white schools, and lived in various areas with all types of people, and have worked in environments where I was one of few blacks, and danced tango for 18 years where there were not a lot of us. And I hope to, help change that. But that's okay. And, I love all types of people, and I interact with them well. So, but you don't see a lot of us. And why? When I approach black folks and say, hey, I'm a tango dancer, teacher, man, this is a great thing, you should get involved. And then they're like, wow, do black people do tango? And I say, well, let's talk about the history of tango. So, we talked about in the 1880s, there was a big influx of European immigrants because Argentina recruited folks, encouraged folks to come down to work land for the promise of riches. And yes, that's some things that are documented. But when we talk about the history of tango, and I'm not going to get into all very specific dates and all this other kind of stuff, because I don't have all of my notes with me. I'm not trying to get across all of these things that you can, pinpoint and recreate my research. It's not a research paper, but just an overall understanding that you can research if you want to. But let's just say, in the mid 1800s, there was slavery, just like all over the world. There was slavery in Argentina and Uruguay. And the slavery there wasn't as bad, I'm gonna say bad, but wasn't as violent and degrading and all that kind of stuff as it was in other places, like in the United States or in Brazil, for example. And that's because of the topography that, the land that was worked in the United States and in Brazil, and having people work out in the fields, that experience as a field slave was different than as a house slave. And in Buenos Aires, in Argentina and Uruguay, they had more house slaves than they would have field slaves like we had. Now, Argentina has a lot of area, a lot of land and stuff, but just is actually, when you talk about, there's more information about what happened through the history of Uruguay, because there are still a lot of blacks in Uruguay. Argentina, not so many, and we'll talk about that, why that is. But just know that there were free, even during slavery times, there were free black slaves. Free black people that either were never slaves or that had secured their freedom way before the abolishment of slavery. So you had people out in the fields that were working, that were black, that were indigenous, like Indian or native folks. And then you had the immigrants and other folks that were European. And when they would get together, they would socialize, right? They had you had these cowboys, right? So they would have cattle and maybe deal with some land things, but they were more cowboys versus slaves, right? So when people got together and relaxed, these were gauchos, the gaucho era, and we're talking in the mid 1800s. And even before that, maybe before the big influx of Europeans, but they would get together and have fun, play music, have a little banjo type instrument, and they would play music. They had, spurs and they had, the boots and everything like that. And they would get together and they would dance and they would play music and they would sing and they would make up things, make up songs. They would improvise songs, freestyle, if you will. And freestyling with rhymes, and they would call this pajada, right? So the pajadores were these guys that would make up songs, right? And these songs would typically be funny or diss somebody. It would be like a battle song of something that would, make somebody else or ridicule somebody in good fun, right? Just like black folks would do, kids would do, making up songs, and rappers would do to make up songs and diss each other, disrespect each other in a battle type setting. So this was something that was done. And you're thinking, okay, wait a minute. Well, who else does that kind of thing? Who else makes up something on the fly and disses each other for fun? Well, I just said it, rappers do it, black folks do it. This is something that, I don't know where it started, but it still happens today. Kids do it today. People make up stuff on the fly and improvise today. So these gauchos that consisted of blacks, indigenous, and some whites were doing this, okay? They would also call it milonga. Milonga, I don't have a specific definition for milonga, like pajada, just you learn these words as you become more of a tango dancer, especially milonga. And the milonga was the music that they would play and the words they would say. So it was pajada and milonga, kind of like the same thing. The pajada maybe were the words and the milonga would be the music that they would play, right? So, and it would be a fast music and people would dance to it, probably just however. They would do taconeos or stomp their feet and stuff like with their heels more than the toes, and they would do all these fancy footwork things to dance to it, okay, to show off their physical prowess. And when after a while, a generation would go by, then you would have the next generation were the compadres. And this is a time when slavery was ending, had ended some, and even though they might have had a proclamation that slaves were free, still took some years before most of those slaves found out that they were free and were actually released and had to fend for themselves. And so, when we talk about these generations, blacks were an integral part of these generations. So sometimes people just say the words gaucho, compadre, compadrito, and just leave it and leave it such that you believe that it's only the Europeans, when that wasn't the case. So they would bring this payada or this milonga that they would play and sing and dance to the suburbs. And they continued the tradition, right? And then, but now you got a lot more slaves involved, or ex-slaves. And now where are these people living? They're living in projects, okay? Projects called conventillos, or tenements, and another word for conventillos are the inquilinato, hence the name of my milonga, right? The inquilinato. What would be an inquilinato? It would be a building. Now, its original use may have been some rich family that owned the whole building and lived in it, or it might have been built specifically to house all of these disenfranchised people. And this is in Uruguay and Argentina. If you look at a map at Uruguay, and you see that Uruguay is right next to Argentina, and it's in the same region. There was a battle in the past, we'll talk about that later, between Spain and Portugal to divide up all of South America. And Portugal won Brazil when this was all said and done. Spain won most of South America, but in this case, Argentina. And they were really battling over this one little area that was very important for commerce, because it was right at the mouth of the river that went all deep into South America, called the Rio de la Plata. So that area was so important for commerce and Navy defense that there was a big fight. It was called the War of Tripoli, and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. But after a war between Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina, after they fought each other, then Uruguay developed their own sovereignty. Some people that were already in that area were able to say, no, we are going to be our own country. And although they are of Spanish descent, you know, the carving up of Argentina, Uruguay, Argentina wasn't able to take up that space, nor was Brazil. So they said, we're going to be our own little city, started as Montevideo and then grew to like our Uruguay, but it still stayed small but important. So anyway, back to the inquilinatos. These conventillos, or these projects, a lot of them were in the city, along the water, along the banks where the river was. And these people lived here. And they lived, it was a building that had a courtyard, maybe a square building that had a courtyard inside. And it had one bathroom, maybe two, one kitchen, and then all of these rooms on one or two levels like the inside of a motel, where on each level you just had one room, and that room consisted of a family. Okay, maybe 3, 4, or 5 people, and they shared a room. So they had a bedroom, basically a large suite maybe, and then if they wanted to do anything else, they had to interact with all of their neighbors and share the other facilities. Okay, so you got various types of people all living together. All right, so you had a lot of cultures that came together, and you can just imagine when people needed to do something for relief, for fun, they got their music out. Okay, the Europeans would bring their instruments from home, maybe some string instruments, some maybe woodwind instruments, what have you. Maybe something called the bandoneon. And the bandoneon is a very important instrument that is still important in tango. It looks like an accordion, and you can play it like this, right? But it has these keys on both sides, where accordion may have piano keys on one side and nothing on the other side. Well, this has a bandoneon would have these like old school typewriter keys on both sides, those little round keys from the old typewriters, and they would still play, like this, and could create all types of music. And it was from Germany originally, I believe, used in funeral processionals, but it became a major important instrument. But that wasn't the first instrument in tango music, but we'll get there. But right now, people were together having fun when they needed to in the courtyards, playing just jam sessions, because the slaves would have drums. Okay, they would have drums, and maybe some of them had those banjo type instruments from back in the day, in the cowboy days. But they really primarily brought drumming, and they would have these drums, and there was candombe, and we'll talk about candombe later, but more in depth later. But the slaves brought the rhythm, playing these drums with the hand and the stick, and they would play, and then they would do their candombe dance, right? And the candombe dance was just it was how people dance separately. They would do some footwork and stuff and just dance to it, right? Then you have instruments, string instruments, maybe some flute and whatever else that these other folks from other places had, and they would join in and play. Right? So people started dancing. All right? Now, maybe a lot of these people maybe had jobs. It's not that they were just sitting there unemployed all the time. These are hardworking people. So they didn't have a lot of money, but they would still work. A lot of them worked for the rich people. They were servants. And some of them were prostitutes, or some of them were crooks and criminals. Okay? But let's just imagine somebody that lives in the inquilinato, and they go to work at some palace somewhere, and people are having big events, and they're dancing waltz waltz has been around for a long time, much longer than tango. Started in what, Austria or Vienna with the Viennese waltz, and that was, I think, more like in the 1700s when that started. It may be earlier. But waltz was the partner dance that people of high class would do. And just imagine the help sitting there watching as they're serving people or what have you. And then they would come home back to the projects, and when they were dance, they would make fun of their bosses. And they would, grab each other and whisk each other around with the music, or with the music that they were playing, which was not waltz. They would whisk each other around and do whatever. But then they had the footwork of the candombe, right? And I'll do an extra show and demonstrate a lot of these things. I'll get some video. I'll get from behind this desk and show you. But just want you to understand right now, the candombe, footwork, drumming, flute playing, violin playing, what have you, mixed with the embrace from the waltz. And then who else might join in? Some visitors might be there, right? Who are these visitors? Visitors from Cuba. Cuban sailors that were in town, docked for the sugar trade. It's a big sugar trade from Cuba. A lot of black sailors were on these boats, and they would have some R&R. And they would say, where's there a place to go and party around here? You meet some folks or whatever. Hey, we having a good time over here. At the crib, so you come by and we just have fun. So, and they actually had something called habanera, which was a group dance that was very choreographed, and they had different sections of choreography where different couples would get together and do some stuff and separate, and contra dance kind of thing. Part of it, they had some parts where they got an embrace and did a waltz type of thing. It's part of the choreography. So, and the blacks participated in this stuff too. And that's why they called it habanera. It's from Havana. It had some elements of black culture and Spanish culture. So they were familiar with this kind of dancing. So they come in and they would also dance with with an embrace and do some things. So in this period of time, we're talking like still the 1800s. We're talking 1860 to 1880, and then 1880s, 1890s. A lot of people are willing to consent that to the idea that tango started somewhere in the 1880s. They don't know how, they don't know what happened. I'm telling you a story that I believe happened. So during this time, the dance was developing and the music was something else, became milonga. You had the milonga that they were already playing, little tunes and melodies, and then the drumming, rhythm, okay? Put that together, you had candombe and you had milonga basically, and people were dancing milonga first. Then just imagine, okay, after they've dancing and partying all along and stuff, they got tired. And the milonga was fast. And you know, how long can you do that? You party, you know, you're doing your thing, and everybody's, you know, hot and bothered, sweating. Then they, you know, the music gets slower, it gets later in the night, as opposed to they be like, right? So then they would still be dancing, but a little bit slower. And you can imagine you had the this courtyard, and maybe it was paved, but most likely it wasn't. It was dirt, and people had to dance and lift their feet up instead of kicking dirt all around and having dust all over the place. So they would lift their feet up as they do it rather than sliding their feet. But basically, they would do something where they lift their feet up and dance slower, and it's very rhythmic, but you know, cool. And they call that kajenge. And kajenge was basically like milonga, but slower, more dramatic, okay? So that developed. We're still talking late 1800s, maybe, and then getting into the 1900s. So now some of these people, ladies, that lived at the inquilinato and were dancing and learning how to dance. Some of them worked in the brothels, okay? So they already knew how to do this dance from where they lived, okay? It was developing for generations, you know, where they lived. And they would say the history is, people agree that or some people say that the white compadritos, okay, so this is the third generation, the womanizing type, okay, so they would come and hang out. Well, yeah, they would come and hang out in the brothels, right? And then maybe some of them might have come, somebody would say they came to the tenements and learned the candombe and some of the footwork and the milonga kind of ideas from the blacks and the combination of folks that were in the inclinatos, and then they would add the embrace to it. Well, I'm here to say that they probably already had the embrace, and maybe people would come and visit and hang out and go slumming and learn how to dance, what the people, the prostitutes already knew how to do. And then they would go, when they go to the brothels, they would dance the dance there. Okay? So it's like, okay, so the tango was of the lower class people. And the higher class people, the middle class and upper class, would have nothing to do with tango. Maybe their sons that were the rebels would go and hang out and go slumming with the compadritos. The compadritos themselves were kind of not the up and up folks, but you know, you got these young folks that are coming in and seeing what's happening, where the party at, you know? So early on in the 1900s, it wasn't very accepted amongst the higher class people. Even today, it's still looked down upon by some people, even though it's taken a whole different image now. But going back, okay, what else was happening during this time in the 1880s? There were like these wars I'm telling you about. There used to be a lot of black men in Argentina. in Uruguay. A lot from all the slavery and stuff. But nowadays, some people don't think there are any. Before YouTube and people were able to prove that they exist, a lot of people in Argentina would say there are no blacks in Argentina. That wasn't true, but that was the general thought. And why? Well, to make a long story short, there was a specific effort to get rid of blacks by the Argentine government. And different ways they would do it. During the wars that they had multiple wars, they would recruit their patriotic black men to fight in these wars. And they would put them on the front lines as basically like cannon fodder, or just basically to get all shot up and killed. They had the most dangerous jobs. There was a big outbreak of yellow fever that came from Brazil, and it disproportionately affected the black folks because when they would get sick, they would have no help, no health, no medical treatment. Many of them died from it. Some may even say that they steered some of that sickness towards the blacks, or maybe kept them together, allowed it to spread and kill a lot of them. So that took a lot of them out. Many of them left after realizing what was going on, this campaign against them. Many of them fled to Uruguay or Brazil, which didn't have this program going on from the government. So the population of blacks in Brazil grew some, and it definitely did not lessen, because you had all these blacks from Argentina that were still alive and got smart to what was going on that left. So, but it was, the fact that, the war happened, it was a lot of men that disappeared during this time. But the women were still around because they couldn't afford to get rid of women because there weren't enough women. So the men, the European men, would intermarry and procreate with the black women. And you had generations of that happening. So the offspring got lighter and lighter in a lot of cases. Not in all cases, because it wasn't all men that disappeared, but a large percentage of them, right? So all these European men came in, and then they had to get rid of all the black men to make some room. So the influence of blackness in the music, art, culture, the new influences were disappearing because many of the blacks were disappearing. But what they had already brought to the table prevailed and was adopted and implemented in the arts. But you can tell as time went on, the music changed because the people contributing to the music had changed. So, during the 1880s into the 1900s, black men were disappearing. So around that time, people can say, okay, well, around somewhere in the 1880s, tango started. We don't know how, So you got about 20 years, period, maybe 30 years, 1878 to 1900. Where people say 1880, so something happened in those 10 years that nobody wants to talk about, but that's what they figure is somehow developed, because if you don't have things that are written down, there's no recordings, these people weren't in the business of documenting their lives, then the first songs that were created were not attributed to anybody, and there were no writings, not many, of what was going on, unless somebody came to visit. Some visitor from Europe came and checked out something and decided to write in their memoir what they saw, and that survived. But a lot of times it didn't. So people really can't say what happened, so they kind of make up stuff. So now the thing is, well, why do I believe this happened? And it's because it happens all over, okay? Oftentimes, there's in the slavery, when you have slavery, the slaves learn the slave master's culture. It's forced on them. But they try to maintain their own culture to some extent. And within the black community, they marry the cultures. The one that their slave master's culture and then their culture. Is not typical of the slave masters to take on the culture of the slaves and create something new. They do eventually adopt things that become popular that came from the blacks over time. That happens. But typically brand new things that never existed that come up were created. If it had something to do with blacks involved in it, it was created by the blacks because they were forced into it from day one. So, and you can see that example in so many different situations and stories around the world throughout time. The African diaspora repeats that over and over and over again. So why would Argentina be any different in its beginnings? Same thing happened with candombe. Candombe, when they talk about the roots of tango, they talk about three things. Talk about candombe, milonga, we already talked about those, and the habanera that was mentioned. So candombe, again, was the drumming. Milonga might have been like, well, actually, I'm saying something. Okay, I'm mixing up. Right? Whereas habanera had a specific rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. Where might you have heard that rhythm? The most famous example of it is from the opera Carmen. I don't know the name of the song, but it goes like da 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 dun 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 boom 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 boom. Okay, well, where would that have come from? Cuba, the sailors, they brought their culture and shared it. They didn't just get culture from Uruguay and Argentina. They brought culture and contributed Uruguay in Argentina. So that rhythm, boom, 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 boom. And they also contributed to candombe, the clave, which is well known in the salsa world. Okay, and it's pop, 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 boom, 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 right? So that's still present in candombe. Candombe has taken on its own path. Tango has its own path. So candombe is thriving still today, separately. Habanera has died out and it still lives, the rhythm still lives in milonga songs. So it's kind of just been married into milonga. So a lot of the milonga songs have that doom, 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 doom. If they do it faster, then they call it milonga candombera. It's like a candombe, almost close to candombe. Do 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 do. Right? When it gets that fast, then they think of it in as closer to candombe, because the candombe rhythm can be various polyrhythms, but it's like do 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 do. So in the tango world, they think of candombe as dum 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 dum, which is basically just a fast habanera rhythm that you find in milonga. Dum 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 dum, or even kajenge songs. Dum 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 dum. Just the speed is different, right? So it started faster, got slower till it disappeared, but it's, you know, they're not making any new music with that. So the dance developed before the music. The music developed like with milonga, and some of the milonga music developed first, but then when he got into the inquilinatos and people just started doing jam sessions and just started dancing to whatever music they were playing, then written music and all that kind of stuff came later to match the developing dances. Then the music got even slower, and then you got tango music, you know, that came out that worked for the music, the dance. And people started singing, and they had the poetry, and they started putting it to words to the music and stuff. And in the music, they would talk about, like, one of the first singers was Carlos Gardel. And Mi Noche Triste, I think, was the first song that had words. And it talked about, it's Mi Noche, my sad night. Mi Noche Triste. And, you know, but basically the music that had wording and stuff would talk about, the tango music would be all languid. It would be very sad and nostalgic. Sometimes they would talk about how proud they were to be a Buenos Aires resident or Argentinian, but they would always talk about lost love, because a lot of the men still outnumbered the women. So the women, if they left them for another man or something, then they would be heartbroken and calling her a bunch of names and all this kind of stuff. The men wrote the music. Unless they were talking about milonga or candombe. In those songs, they were talking about partying and stuff, talking about the blacks and talking about how they would be partying and drumming, talking about the tambores, which are drums, talking about candombe and carnival and you know, and all this. It was all festive. You didn't have a whole lot of sad topics for milonga music, because that music was used to elevate and uplift people's spirits that may have had a lot more reason to be all downtrodden, you know. But it's just one of those things where a lot of things happened and contributed to what was happening. And where I got some of this information from is a book, and I talked about it last time. It's called The Art History of Love. Tango, The Art History of Love. That's the title of the book. Tango, The Art History of Love. By Robert Farris Thompson, who is an art history professor and researcher from Princeton University. And he's a tango dancer, and he is Caucasian and well regarded in his work, musicologist. He deals with he's written other books dealing with other aspects of the African diaspora, and that's his focus. So tango, he found the Africanness and the art history aspects of the history of tango. But I also went to Uruguay researching candombe and tango, which is big there as well, and talking to historians face to face. I even have some footage of it somewhere that I'll dig up and format so I can put some of it on here. I'm gonna need some translators, some Spanish translators. So those who can do that and give me some subtitles and stuff, I'm gonna please inbox me, contact me, let me know that you're willing to do that for me. It'll be very interesting work. And just talking to people, people about what they think happened, what people accept as true, and why they accept it. A lot of people don't know. They'll admit they don't really know. They just go by this story or that story, and what their parents told them or their grandparents told them, but you can see in the artwork, the old artwork, you can see in how people interact, you can see how in the world typically things have developed from the African diaspora. You can imagine, when people got together, what happened. Tango didn't just drop from the sky into a brothel. Okay? So, and then even, later, when it wasn't necessarily associated with the brothels or the projects, people were just doing it. There was a guy, I forget, he in like 1906, I forget his name, took tango to Europe and started creating shows dressed as a gaucho. So he was romanticizing the lifestyle of a gaucho, cowboy from Argentina or Uruguay, and that danced tango, created this show, and it took the world by storm, Europe by storm, especially France. And everybody wanted to start learning how to do this dance. And some of it was kajenge, but maybe, he had to straighten it up to make it more palatable to the Europeans. So he probably got there with kajenge, but had to straighten it up a little bit, because kajenge would be all bent and down and grounded, but Europeans were like, that's too Afrocentric, too low class. So straighten it up, and we're used to waltz and stuff. So it became a big deal. So before that point, this is like I said, 1910s, first, second decade of the 1900s. up to that point, it was just what the low class people did in Argentina and Uruguay. But once it became the big deal in Europe, now it became, oh, well, this is our dance, Argentina would say. This is ours, you know, and you know, this is something that came from us, and then now it became more of a thing, especially when Eva Perón, who was the daughter of one of the Juan Perón, the president at the time, but she took to it. And there's a movie about her that Madonna played her called Evita, Evita, Eva Perón. That was her nickname, Evita. She took to tango, and people were like, oh, well, she likes it, then it must be okay, right? But not everybody accepted it, but more and more people did. So now it elevated from the brothels and went to the parlors and the cafes, and then people started dancing it there. Okay? So that's like I said, a quick story. I'm going off of, top of my head without all of my information or details and stuff, because it's not necessary for this. But I do invite folks who see this video later and want to make some comments and ask questions, then I can, address them in the comments, or even, address it in a new video. But I will put some other information out there, some audio visuals, so you'll be able to see these things, and we'll go over these things again with some examples. So the internet is a wonderful thing nowadays. Plus I have some old, stuff in computer somewhere, an old computer somewhere. So it's going to take some effort to put that stuff together and get it to you guys. But I'm not just making stuff up, right? Just so you'll get a chance to have some more interesting images in your brain about what could have happened. And so nowadays, it's, the tango has developed such and has so many influences that is further and further removed from what blacks are used to now. So it's kind of the music, because when it used to have drumming, the drumming started disappearing as the blacks disappeared in the music, in the recorded music. Early recorded music, especially in the milongas, had actual drumming going on. But now, you hear some songs from the 1920s or whatever, where they didn't have drums, but if they needed the percussion sound, they would bang on a bass or the cello or something like that to create some type of percussion. So the music has rhythm, but the percussion instruments disappeared out of Argentina and only stayed in the candombe realm. So, but right now, being a black person in tango is not a bad thing. If you can dance, then you're good to go. People may not assume that you can dance at first just by looking at you. But if you can dance and they watch you, they'll see. Okay? And there are not enough of us out here that represent really well in tango. But there can be, there should be. It's in us. It's in our DNA. Because it's still, in tango, a lot of the Afrocentric aspects, the improvisation, the groundedness, the just these things are very specific to even how we address things and do things now. We're still creating on the fly, not writing a whole lot down, just doing it because it feels good and going for it versus trying to write it down and categorize it and formalize it. That's not what we typically do. But we can make up something more on a fly with no problem. So that's still a good thing in tango, to be able to improvise when you need to. So the last thing I'll say when we talk about milonga, I mentioned the word milonga before, and that was referring to the music. But we use the word milonga all the time now, and it refers to three things. That same word refers to the music and the fast-paced music that we dance to. It refers to how we dance to that music. So we dance milonga to milonga music, and there's a way to do that. And then we actually go to milongas to dance tango. So the event itself is called a milonga. So it's not called a tango dance or whatever, it's called a milonga. We go to milongas to dance tango. When we go dance tango, we dance tango as one rhythm, milonga is another rhythm, and valse is a rhythm. Valse is the waltz rhythm. So they made music for waltz that was based on Viennese waltz. And I don't know really much about when that happened, but it exists. And it's a testament to the early influence of waltz. So a lot of musicians made waltzes that were in the tango fashion. So people can dance tango to waltz music. So you have tango, waltz, or they call it valse, V-A-L-S. Tango, valse, and milonga are the three rhythms you will dance to every time you go out to a milonga to dance Argentine tango. So, so just keep that in mind, because you'll hear that word often, and that typically is a question that people have. What does this milonga mean? I keep hearing it, but it's in different contexts and I'm confused. And that's why. And the practice of using the same word to refer to a dance, a music, and a location all at the same time is very African in its nature. It's done in Africa a lot, where they use the same word to refer to multiple things, to refer to everything regarding that topic. So, just to let you know. The other aspects that are still, some things that are still left in the world of tango that's of African descent, the word itself, tango. The language, the Bantu people from Africa, from the Angola region, Congo region of Africa, have their language has certain endings in their words. Even the names of the countries. Just think of it. These are all words that are involving Africa or condone or tango, or what would have happened in the slaves bringing their culture to South America. and implementing that into mixing it with what was going on in their new home. So think about it. You have the Congo, that ends in NGO. Angola, it has an NGO in there. Tango has an NGO. Milonga has an NGA. Candombe, MBE. Candomblé, which is in Brazil, it's a religion in Brazil. The same people came from the same region and kind of just found themselves either in Brazil, Uruguay, or Argentina. What other words? You have Malambe, which is another word. But there's a whole lot of words that are either African or in Uruguay, Argentina, or Brazil. That Kizomba, that's a new dance, a relatively new dance that comes from the exact same region. Luanda, which is in Angola, right? And Candombe, they say comes from Angola or that region, Luanda, NDA. So a lot of these words have a similar sound, NDA, MBE, MBA, whatever, okay? So there's a lot of similarities there, and you guys kind of wonder how all that happened. But you're talking multiple countries, multiple cultures, multiple eras, hundreds of years, but they're still connected, even if they spread out a little bit, okay? A person doing the research would go through a lot to try to weave all that together, but you can see just from the outset, there's some connection there, right? So right now I'm going to sign off. We will continue. We'll touch on these topics throughout other conversations and things, but if you're following this, then you will be able to refer back to, or you'll say, oh yeah, I remember he talked about that. Now I see it. Okay, when I see a lot of you in person, you'll experience some things with me. Either way, I will try to get across to you as much as I can from my understanding and why I love tango and why I think other folks should too. Okay, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you watch to the end. We have a milonga every Thursday in Chicago, 2546 West Peterson Avenue at a place called the Turkish Cuisine. And I have classes. 7:30 is a beginner class. 8:30 is an intermediate class. And then the milonga starts at 9:30 for dancing. And you can eat good food there. It's BYOB. And I teach classes at the Silver Room, tango classes. And that's 1506 East 53rd Street in Chicago at a place called the Silver Room. And it's in the back of the store. And it's a hip, cool place. And that class starts Wednesdays. Beginner class is at 6 o'clock p.m. Intermediate class is at 7 p.m. They're hour-long classes, $10 each. All the classes are $10. But we leave right after that. So come and check me out. If you want private lessons, I do lots of private lessons. So contact me at 773-644-1502, 773-644-1502. Let me know if you're going to be in town, you want private lessons, or if you're just interested in finding out what I have to offer. We'll be talking a lot about what I teach and philosophies and teaching and dancing and all that kind of stuff. But right now, we're just getting the background information together, okay? Anyway, last thing, there's going to be a website coming out soon. Is loxystream.com, LOXYSTREAM.com, and that will be an opportunity for you to learn how to dance via live stream. I will be one of the instructors, but I will not be the only one. There will be plenty of other instructors of very many dance forms, and it'll be a one-stop shop for learning all different types of dances, and you can get to know your teachers. They'll live stream to you. They can even see you and help you with your dance, okay? And they can be from anywhere in the world. As long as you speak the language or have a translator, you'll be fine, okay? So just keep an eye out for that, and I'll let folks know when that is hot and ready, okay? But it's coming soon. Anyway, I'm out of here. Thanks. This has been the Ernest Williams Tango Show. Have a good day.